All right. So I'm not famous like Hao and Guang. So if I can just take 30 seconds to introduce myself. My name is Ken Jung, international business immigration attorney with 15 years of experience helping Vietkios invest, live, retire, and find wives in Vietnam. So if you ever heard that on YouTube, just give me a hands up. All right, there's some people that know. So we're the last panel, and I swear you gave food, you gave booze, and now I promise this is the most informative panel because who here is looking to buy a house or live in Vietnam? Okay, good. So that's exactly what we're talking about today. So I'm gonna have our distinguished panelists introduce themselves. So Lawrence?
Well, thanks for everyone's attention this afternoon. Last panel discussion, it really shows, but thank you for staying. One side note is that I'm so intrigued by everything that has been sort of shared today. And when I sort of went out for my coffee earlier on, it kind of felt like this was almost like a collective therapy in many respects. It felt like so many sort of touching points which were very personal, but also strangely reflective of my own personal experiences of having lived and worked in Asia over the last decade. I was particularly intrigued by one of the panelists discussing that she spent a third of her life in the UK and then 2/3 of her life in Vietnam. I'm almost the opposite in terms of 2/3 of my life in the UK and 1/3 in Asia. So of those Asian countries, I've lived and worked in Mongolia, Myanmar, Vietnam, and Cambodia. I've just returned to Vietnam, taking up the role of Director of Capital Markets Services at CBRE, which is basically helping investors buy and sell assets. So it could be like a development site, it could be like a hotel, it could be an office building. We also help them with fundraising and finding joint venture partners. Before that, I was the Managing Director of CBRE in Cambodia. Before that, I had a small business here in Vietnam, and I think the polite way of putting it is I got my ass handed to me by the pandemic, which I'm sure most people can relate to in this audience. But yeah, long story short, I think Vietnam is probably one of the most interesting contexts, regionally, if not globally, for so many reasons, and I hope to jump into some of those reasons today. So I'll hand over the mic to Leo.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Leo Nishimura. As you can guess from my name, I'm not Vietnamese. I'm 100% Japanese. So firstly, I would like to thank you all for letting me here. I'm just a OV wannabe, and I'm now living in Vietnam for 4 years. And I'm doing this township development in the BritCham province. Some of the panelists have already referred to this place. It's attached to the north of Ho Chi Minh City. And we are making a new city there in partnership with the government. As I'm now wearing the t-shirt of the BritCham new city, you can see. And I would like to also appreciate for members, about 50 members here who joined the tour yesterday morning. Spared like an hour and a half to take a trip to BritCham province and had some view of what our development is how it's going on. And our development itself had started in 2012. The BritCham province decided to make a BritCham new city, 1,000 hectares of lands, and develop it into a new city. And we are originally, TOKYU Corporation is a railway company in Japan. And we have been doing like a township development for 100 years in Tokyo and Yokohama area. So we kind of brought the know-hows, the human resource, some of the investments here in Vietnam. And we are doing like real sim cities. If people above certain age would know the sim city game. So that's what's going on. That's what we are doing and what the Japanese are trying to make here in Vietnam to dedicate ourselves. And so far, for 5 years, I have been doing like building 4 condominiums. Last year, we just built a shopping center. We've been also inviting like international schools, hospitals, etc. And it's now kind of becoming a township. So if you didn't make it yesterday, we'll be always welcome to invite you, guide you around. So please contact me if you need any information. So that's just my self-introduction first.
Great. Thank you, Lawrence and Leo. So let's get to the hard-hitting questions. So for many overseas Vietnamese returning to Vietnam, navigating the real estate market can be daunting. So what are some of the challenges that OVs face specifically when looking at real estate in Vietnam?
Who do you want to go first? I guess I'll jump in there. That was a very British response. Well, I think it's an extremely opaque market to start off with. So I think the reality is you have to find professionals to help you navigate the market. You'll need local help for sure, particularly around legal documents. And I guess that's something that someone like Ken can help with in his capacity. But expect the unexpected and also reduce your trust levels, I would say. It's very easy to lose your shirt in this context. So approach with caution. If you're really sort of doing something on a larger scale, make sure you've got the legal support. But outside of that, a company like CBRE could help with something like a property valuation, just to make sure that the asset value is really sort of reflective of what you're about to acquire. Having a professional agent as well can help you navigate and find real opportunities. So I think these are really some of the key areas to sort of sum up what the challenges may be and some of the solutions.
Great. Anything to add to that, Lee?
That about wrapped up everything, but to be like more specific in examples, like I do development in Biên, so there are a lot of foreigners inside our new city. Actually, half of our residents are foreigners. And there's a Vietnamese law, that housing law, that restricts only 30% of the total units can be sold to foreigners in the sales purchase agreement style. So that's the kind of the regulation that people wouldn't regularly know, but we have to pay attention to, because that's kind of the limit of what people can actually acquire, or people, whether you're seeing the market as investment style or you actually want to live in this place, the choice is going to be different. So I think the legal issues is quite a hurdle for the foreigners right now.
So we'll get to those legal issues later, but this is for Lawrence. In light of the new metro line, has anybody used the metro yet? All right. So in light of the metro line and the long-term investment prospects for private housing, considering factors like urbanization, economic growth, and infrastructure development. So pretty much in a nutshell, where should we invest?
It's a tough question. You know, it's a big question. And are we talking about Saigon? Are we talking about Hanoi? What are we talking about as well? Is it residential property? Is it land? It all depends. If you are a Vietnamese individual, I would be putting my money into land where possible. Of course, the ticket can be quite challenging, and also the DD can be quite challenging, but that's really where you're going to get a lot of upside in terms of your return on investment. Where is also really important. Like, you know, it's the typical adage: location, location, location. The location is critical for the long-term investment outcome. The east of Ho Chi Minh City is doing really well on the back of all of the administrative changes, like the Tu Duc City, you know, new city status, infrastructure. That's probably like the sexiest thing if you're an investor. As Ken mentioned, the metro line, the new airport. All of this infrastructure adds a huge amount of potential upside to your investment, whether it's a residential apartment or whether it's land, whether it's a commercial property. There's so much benefit. Just looking at the bigger picture, Vietnam is probably, as I say, one of the most interesting sort of real estate markets in the region. We've got huge drivers such as, you know, the growing GDP of something like 6.5%. We have the mega sort of China plus one trend, which in my opinion is only going to continue over the short to midterm. I think Donald Trump coming back into office is going to be a huge boom for Vietnam. A lot of people are hedging and they're not making a stance on that, but I think it's going to hugely benefit. And where that comes in for real estate is, of course, like industrial and logistics real estate, which is something else that we touch on. but also the growth of Vietnam's already large middle class. So we're going to move up the supply chain in terms of technical products. We're already sort of like 50% of all of Samsung's products produced in country. And we're going to see more of that, in my opinion, because while we may be at risk of higher tariffs, so China's going to get something like a 60% tariff, we're probably going to get something like a 10 to 20% tariff, we're still going to be cheaper, we're still going to have a more affordable workforce of that 101 million person population, that average age of 32. Not to mention urbanization is only at like 39%, which is incredible. You know, Thailand is at sort of 45%, China is at something like 60%. So the demographics, the mega trends are super exciting for Vietnamese real estate. And you know, personally, every spare dime I have is I flick over to my wife and we put it into property. So I'm a personal believer in so many levels, both professionally and also personally. So yeah.
Thank you very much. And this question is for Leo. What are the typical housing preferences of returning OVs and expats versus local Vietnamese residents?
As I already mentioned, half of the residents of our properties are actually foreigners, not necessarily overseas Vietnamese, but the preference for the people from overseas are quite similar. They have already experienced the high-class modern living styles already, so this is also their requirements. So like the modern design, functionality. So we need a lot of functions inside the common areas, and we need like the well-designed, equipped condominiums and the living facilities as well. So this is about the housing itself, but what's more important would be the environment, that is surrounding the housings. So whether if you were to live with your families, the educational facilities or like the medical facilities are equipped or not, is high-graded enough for the overseas Vietnamese to accept or not. And also, we call it the 7 environments, and we invest in this like infrastructure ourselves inside our new city. But the medical education, ICT infrastructure, the working style, the entertainment, and also like the transportation is also one important factor, because we think that we have to be sustainable to make this city more attractive. So these are the factors that we need for people to actually enjoy the living lifestyle and the work style. So these, all these factors needs to be in above certain levels. So that's what they require, and that's what we prefer for them for now.
Great, thank you very much. And when I saw this question, I did ask permission of the speakers that I can answer it, just because of the fact that I've been an attorney for 15 years. So I'll ask myself this question, but I promise to answer very short.
Okay.
The question is, what are some of the tips for OVs to ensure a smooth and secure property transaction in Vietnam, including due diligence and legal advice? So I would just say very easily, thank you guys, is that you got to make sure the developer is strong, right? Do they have a good brand name? Do they have a good track record? You also want to look at the bank that is lending to the developer, because soon they'll lend to you possibly as well. You got to look at the paperwork. Will they get the pink book or the red book? And then, of course, you want to make sure there's an escrow or some sort of financial transaction for you to buy the property, right? And that's where you understand how to purchase a property in Vietnam. And that is the real legal due diligence that you need. And of course, if you need, then of course law firms will also help you as well, and as well as these experts. Okay? So I know we have to wrap it up, and our goal is to keep it very short, but can we have one question from the audience? So does anybody have a burning question about real estate in Vietnam that our experts can answer in 32 seconds? Oh yes, right here.
This question is for Lawrence, firstly, because you mentioned that you are putting all your money into real estate. And I'm just wondering, what areas are you interested in, just the surrounding area, and what is motivating you?
So just to sort of make sure I heard the question correctly. You're asking me where I'm investing.
Yes.
And what asset class? So it's just land. My wife's Vietnamese, by the way,
Right.
so it's obviously not me, but my
Sure.
cash goes to her. But geographically,
Geographically?
yeah, so Saigon, Cần Giờ, the south of Ho Chi Minh City is super interesting for various reasons. Like Vingroup is building a huge mega city down there, like 3,000 hectare. It's kind of not on people's radar, but it's part of Ho Chi Minh City, and it's sort of the last undeveloped district of the city. Outside of that, Tu Duc, District 9, is quite interesting as well. There's still quite interesting opportunities to be had there, and it's still relatively opaque. You've got to have good contacts to find those opportunities, but they do exist. You know, had a few conversations today about this specific subject, and you know, at the end of the day, it's an information game. You've got to be able to find the opportunities in the right places and have the right contacts in order to unlock them. And it's really, you know, that's investing 101 in many respects, but location is key.
Great. Thank you so much for your question. I'm sure that all the teams are very experienced in helping folks buy real estate in Vietnam. So with that said, I feel it's just like a courtroom where I go wait for 8 hours in the courtroom and I speak for 3 minutes, but it's action-packed. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you to our panelists.
Thank you.
And I'll pass it back to our esteemed...
Thank you so much, Ken, for that great session. Really informative. So goodbye in Bình Dương, Cần Giờ, Tu Duc. Thank you so much, guys.